Like It or Not with Benjamin Dixon starts now.
Welcome to Like It or Not, where we're free to tell the truth and not care who doesn't like it. I'm one of your hosts, Benjamin Dixon, as always, joined by my brother from another mother, James Bubba Williams, also known as DJ Exclusive. How you doing this morning, brother?
Morning, I'm good. So how about yourself?
All right. It is an early morning as always, and we have a lot of news and politics to cover. We have a lot of things to tackle, but we don't want to tackle them without the right kind of joy that's going on. And that's why we got you, man. So I appreciate you and appreciate the music that you're going. Shout out to everyone who's in the Lion's Den. That's what they're calling it now. I was calling it the VIP room, the VIP section. Trying to conjure up images of, when we used to party back before COVID. But somebody said that that's not the best way to title it. So they named themselves the Lion Den. So shout out to everyone who is in basically our patron party. And you can get access to that by going to patreon.com/the BPD show or becoming a Twitch subscriber. Good morning to everyone in all the different chat rooms. Before we get started this morning, make sure you greet somebody because we're in the middle of the pandemic and there's no telling how many people are at home by themselves and could use somebody to say good morning. So James, good morning, man.
Absolutely. Good morning, Ben. Good morning. I appreciate that.
How you holding up in all this cold weather?
I'm good, man. I'm like a bear. I hibernate, so I'm good. I love it.
I feel that a lot of people aren't doing as good around the country because we weren't prepared for it. We'll be discussing that. I'm also excited this morning. We'll be joined later on by Aida Rodriguez, as well as a couple of other guests that we have coming on to discuss the issues. As always, Rebecca Azor will be back tomorrow. So for everyone who is wondering and looking for her face, she will be in the place tomorrow morning with the rest of us. James, I get the feeling sometimes people don't even come to see me talk about politics. They just come to see Rebecca talk about whatever Rebecca wants to talk about. So, but I'm not, I'm not jealous. I'm not jealous at all, but she'll be back tomorrow morning to join us for the rest of the week and going forward. That said, we've got a whole lot of news to cover and we want you to participate. You can go and download the Voices app by Action Sprout. And that is the way that we're going to be moving forward, give you an opportunity to give us your feedback and your takes, even if it's in a video format. You could send us a video of you discussing the topics. We'll have an image later on in this episode with the code. You need a code to access our community, the Like It or Not community. But what we're creating is interactive media where the audience gets an opportunity to participate and the audience gets an opportunity to give us feedback in real time. And I think that's one of the dopest things about doing this independent media thing. We're not just talking to you. We have a conversation going on with you at all times. So go to your app store, whether it be Apple or Android, God forbid, go download Voices by, I'm going to get in trouble with this Android thing. Like I simply do. I simply don't know how people can use it. Like once you get used to a particular format and, style, like people can't come from Android to Apple very easily. And I certainly can't go from Apple iOS over to Android. But either way, both apps are available for you to download for Voices by Action Sprout. And that way you could join our community and we will give you the access code throughout this episode as we go.
Yes, sir.
That said, let's cover some news. You guys ready to go? Let's rock and roll. So on Monday, due to extreme winter weather, more than 2 million homes and businesses were without electricity in Texas. According to the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, the agency that oversees the state's power grid, outages began at 1:25 a.m. and are expected to continue throughout the day today. Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo, residents, if they start losing feeling in their hands and their legs. And she detailed the symptoms of hypothermia to her constituents so that they could be aware of what they are going to potentially face in these frigid temperatures as their power grid in Texas was not able to handle the demand. Now, to be sure, only 5% of the total electricity outages were caused by the storm. Only 5% of the outages were caused by the storm, while millions of people have been disconnected from their electricity because the statewide electricity demand exceeded supply. In other words, the state was not ready for this event, not because of the snowstorm. Now, the snowstorm did not make it any better. The snowstorm did not create conditions conducive to a better outcome, but the state of Texas was not prepared. This loss of power has impacted the state just beyond heating. Right? In Harris County, public health facility officials were forced to scramble to distribute 8,400 COVID-19 vaccines doses before they spoiled due to lack of refrigeration. 6 people were hospitalized in Northwest Harris County for carbon monoxide poisoning. The fire marshal in that county said the following, said investigators found a charcoal grill that was being used indoors. So it's a compounding confluence of factors that are making conditions in Texas really dangerous for a lot of residents of Texas. Fort Worth officials issued a water boil notice on Monday afternoon for the north part of the city, citing multiple power outages at the Eagle Mountain water plant. Making matters worse, forecasters predict another winter storm is going to strike the region Tuesday evening into Wednesday. So this is just beginning. The White House also issued a state of emergency, a federal emergency declaration for the state, and Republican Governor Greg Abbott, who requested the declaration, thanked President Joe Biden for the declaration. So there's a lot happening in the state of Texas. Anyone who is watching or viewing us from this area, we hope that you are in safe conditions. What bothered me, James, about this is that being unprepared like this really means that the most vulnerable in these communities are going to suffer and potentially not make it. Here in Atlanta, every winter, there's so many Americans, Atlanta residents, who die from exposure and hypothermia when it gets cold here in Atlanta. And unfortunately, this kind of situation is going to happen in Texas because we don't have a system that's structured to actually take care of people in these types of crises. And so for the judge, Harris County Judge Linda Hidalgo, I appreciate her warning, James, but if we got to warn our residents and our constituents that because of our power grid and the excess demand cannot meet the supply, so shout out to capitalism for failing in this moment. But if we got to warn our constituents that they need to call 911 if their legs and limbs start becoming numb, I think that perhaps we should be preparing as a nation to insulate our infrastructure, for lack of a better phrase, to be able to handle these types of situations, because let's be sure these storms are only going to increase in intensity because of climate change. But we're dealing with a nation where half of the people in this country don't even believe climate change is real. And then we have another half of this country, the same half, who believes that we can continue existing in this fossil fuel system where we simply are not moving forward on solar energy or any renewable energies. And now we're seeing that the shortage in Texas is not just a result of the storm, but the shortage in Texas is actually a result of supply and demand. I want to read on your screen a tweet from a congresswoman, not even from Texas. She's from Colorado. And this is what this Republican congresswoman said. She said, rolling blackouts from North Dakota to Texas have turned into lengthy power outages in freezing conditions. Biden needs to lift his oil and gas ban as we need reliable energy sources. And then she said this, the Green New Deal was just proven unsustainable as renewables are clearly unreliable. The gag is this, we haven't even instituted the Green New Deal. And we're seeing very clearly that what's happening in Texas is a result of our current method of doing things, of obtaining energy and distributing energy. But here we have, the absurdity of it all, where people are looking at the exact conditions that are caused by what we're doing with fossil fuels and what we're doing with our power grids across this country and saying, look, this disaster that's being caused in Texas is the result of the Green New Deal. It's a level of gaslighting, James, that really kind of sends me early in the morning. It makes me enraged because there are people dying right? Let's just be real. These kind of frigid conditions, Texas is not prepared for. And so the homeless population in Texas, they are vulnerable to this. And if we have a system that does not prepare to at least take care of homeless and unhoused people in these type of circumstances, if we don't have a system that is prepared to handle the supply, or rather the demand for electricity, and we're blaming it on the solution, then to me, it's like Texas, along with America, is doing everything that it needs to do to literally destroy itself in this moment. And the people, James, who are going to be hurt the most are the people who are the most vulnerable, the people who can't afford who don't have housing, the people who can't afford to go to their friend's house. Like, they don't have any place. And so they're left exposed to these type of conditions. And this is not just happening in Texas. We see this repeat itself across the country all of the time. Right. I don't know, man. What are you feeling about this situation where, like, the real humanity of it, right? We're playing games with people's lives here. What are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, very much ill prepared. The situation in Texas has been bad, and you would think that they would have started getting ready or doing those preparations ahead of time. They're saying a lot of the outages come from the turbines that they have there. They're frozen, so they're not generating as much electricity as they would. Right. But even still, if we knew this was going to happen, we always have backups in place to make sure everything goes good. It just seems like that wasn't done. I'm not sure if you saw last week, it was like almost 100-car pileup in Fort Worth, where 6 people lost their lives. The most horrific accident I've ever seen. And this just goes to show we have no preparation, no infrastructure. Atlanta got smart once we had our ice storm and people were stranded on the highway. 1 inch of ice, dude, and it looked like total apocalyptic Atlanta. It looked like The Walking Dead. It literally did. It just goes to show that as America, the money is funneled elsewhere, and it doesn't go to the infrastructure and getting things together like we need to have done. And what happens in the long run, people that are without power, without energy, they're freezing, they're dying, hypothermia, in their own damn home, which makes no sense. This family of 6, they were trying to stay warm, so they lit a charcoal grill in the house. It's just disappointing, and you would just think that cities would do much better, but that's not the case.
That's not the case. Listen, when the snowpocalypse happened in Atlanta, and by snowpocalypse, I mean 1 inch of snow. I was living in Boston, Massachusetts at the time, and we were dealing with, like, literally piles of snow that were like 6 or 10 feet high. But you're right, being in these states are unprepared. And it's not just about preparation, right? It's also about the mindset towards renewable energy, the Green New Deal, and climate change, because we're ignoring this stuff, right? We're plowing headlong into a disaster because we have leadership who doesn't respect, right? Truth and fact and reality. Right. But they go with whatever conspiracy theory. Right. We see so many absurd takes and so many examples of blaming the actual solution to the problem. That said, and I mentioned Boston, I want to bring up a friend of the show, my friend Aida Rodriguez, who was born. I just found this out, born in Boston, Massachusetts. And she was a finalist on season 8 of NBC's Last Comic Standing, 5-time host of the Imagine Awards, and often appears on TYT, where I've met her wonderful work. Aida Rodriguez, how are you doing this morning? Thanks so much for joining us so early.
Welcome.
I'm good. I don't sleep. Do you
we
see
don't have your
where
audio. It's possible you might be muted on, but we'll let we'll let Dwayne take that. Okay, great. I couldn't hear you, but now I can hear you. Good morning again. Thank you for joining me so early in the morning. How are you?
I'm good. I tell you, I don't sleep. Do you see the country we live in? I mean, it's hard to sleep. It's hard to, I come from people that came from other parts of the world thinking that America was it. And I was like, y'all should have stayed home.
You mean to all the people who came to America looking for a city shining on a hill? They came and they thought that this was going to be the place of opportunity. But if they came in the year of our Lord 2020, they got stuck with a whole bunch of foolishness that's been piling up for the last couple of generations. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's been, It's funny because America has the best marketing department, right? The Corporation of America has the best marketing department, and they sell this bill of goods that this is the country of opportunity, the land of the free and the home of the brave. But they're only talking about one specific group of people. It's not talking about all of us. And so a country that was built by immigrants on the back of immigrants, by the kidnapped, it's amazing to me that we are still in awe when America does America.
When America does America, that's depressing, but you're right? I mean, when you think about the fact that America has shown us in my lifetime, I can't vouch for it. Like, I could read about it and see what we were doing in previous generations. But for the 40 years of my existence, America has been on this collision course with ignorance, with stupidity, and downright denial of truth and reality. And I feel like 2020, the pandemic, I think it's a perfect example of how we brought this on ourselves. And when I say we, I don't mean the marginalized people in this country. I mean the powerful in this country. But all of us have to suffer as a result of this madness, this absurdity. We're approaching 500,000 people dead from COVID-19. So I understand if like you said, you're not sleeping because that's the reality of what we face in this country. It's just, we're on a collision course. What do you think?
It's funny because it's really sad that this country has the potential to be great. So let's not just speak from the ungrateful. I mean, look at all the great work that the ancestors of Black people did in this country in building. I mean, one of the greatest, structurally. I mean, I've been all over the world, and one thing you can appreciate in America is the plumbing. I mean, if you go anywhere else in the world and you use a bathroom anywhere in the world, you'll be like, yo, home, we got good toilets. That's one good thing we got over there.
Right.
But it saddens me to know that we have people fighting on Twitter defending a military force that's going to exist in outer space that does not exist yet, and calling people unpatriotic because they're not defending this alleged space force. But they don't give a damn about homeless people. They don't care about the people who are struggling right down the street. And it's just the dumbing down of America, like you said, has been going on for so long. The attack on the education, I mean, Theodore Roosevelt said the greatest preserver of democracy is education. So you've seen them attack our education. Ignorance has been, it's just being sprinkled on us. People are being fed improperly intellectually. They've been nutrition. I mean, we're on the decline. We're the most obese country in the world. And then we want to pop our collar on other places saying that we the place, when the people who live here can't even have a decent living wage. And I got a problem with that.
Right. And then we have conditions like what's happening in Texas. There was an image that someone shared via Twitter of the Ramada Inn, right? The Ramada Inn in Austin, Texas, charging $1,000 a night last night for people to be able to get off the streets. And we know in some circumstances that even if homeless shelters aren't able to take capacity, there are programs where organizations buy out hotel rooms in this type of condition in order to help homeless people or unhoused people get into some kind of safety. And then we see this price gouging, which is allegedly illegal, right? But we see it all the time across this country, which shows us that we're not only at odds with the ignorance of America, but Ida, we're also at odds with the greed of America and how that greed is like one of the number one ways we're going to destroy ourselves. What do you think?
It's funny because when you hear the kids say eat the rich, and people think it's a joke. How much longer do you think you're just going to keep doing people the way you've been doing them and there will be no revolution? Like how much longer do you think you're going to continue to treat people like they are less than and they're not going to show up? Because the evolution of humanity is where it is right now. So is the evolution of savagery or whatever it is that people have to do to survive. You know what I'm saying? So when I think about what's happening in Austin, there's an influx of people who've moved there with wealth because they want to preserve their wealth. A lot of them have left California because they want tax breaks. And during the pandemic, they had the opportunity and the privilege to be able to move to a place like Austin, Texas. A lot of billionaires and millionaires have moved there. You would think that they would employ their humanity to look out for the people that are in that city. I mean, I was in Austin in October, and I left depressed with the homelessness that I was faced with. Not that I don't know it exists. I used to be homeless, but just to see that the faces that I saw, the majority of the faces were Black, and they are right around the corner from all the happening stuff in Austin. And to just walk past those people and not see human beings who are, I mean, they are a direct result of the toxic capitalism in this country. It's just appalling. And so I'm just saying what is happening right now, it is a cleansing, if you will, because we are now being exposed, the majority of us. Before, many of us knew what was happening, but now a lot of us are seeing what's happening, and there's a cleansing. The dirty laundry is being aired. And what's going to happen is that people are going to start reacting to that because they have to survive. And we can't continue to just watch the children of the descendants of the slaves from Africa that came here by way of the Caribbean, that have been here to build this country, the descendants of the natives, the First Nations people of this land and all the other lands that were colonized. And you have to look at this from a global perspective because this is happening around the world. At some point, the people who outnumber those who are feeding off of us and have been for so long are going to turn around and say, "Hey, there's power in numbers. We are done with this. We're tired of this." And at some point, it's just going to get ugly. So I don't understand where the rationale is, because nobody's immortal, not that I know of. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you know,
they're playing with their lives. They are playing with their lives. Ida, you speak into a side of me that I'm doing my due diligence, and everybody around me, my entire team knows I'm doing my due diligence not to wake up that dragon in me, because you can only mess with people so long. And they better be lucky. I got lucky and I busted Michael Bloomberg at the beginning of this pandemic and started making just enough money for me not to have to go ballistic on this country. Right. But their family, their people, their fathers and mothers who are having to make this calculus that you're talking about. Right. They're trying to figure out how they're going to feed their kids. That's right. While this country is playing games with their lives. Like not only on the federal level, but we're looking on the Texas level. We're looking at the storms. Like, I mean, Ramada Inn is trying to charge somebody $1,000 a night to get out of this storm. And you're telling me that you expect, see, this is what when you say they're not immortal, I think they are. Right. Yeah. And we're not advocating for violence. But what I'm saying is, what do you expect people to do when they can't feed their kids because of the ignorance of this country? Like, they're begging for a revolution. And you just speak into that. Take it from there, Ida, because if you let me talk about this. Just say, you're my spirit person, because I don't do that white people stuff talking about spirit animals. I slap somebody for calling me that. But I'm going to tell you this. The thing is that we've been conditioned to always speak, we're not being violent. We're not advocating for violence. There is no greater violence than economic violence. It is, it is egregious. It has been happening for a very long time in our communities. We have watched crack being sprinkled into our communities gleefully and then told us to say no to drugs. We have constantly been, it has been, what has been happening to us. I feel like we are in an experiment. Sometimes the Jim Carrey movie, I feel like all Black and brown people are in this movie. They're watching us, right? They mock us, they make fun of us, they poke us, they beat us, they kill us, they starve us, they do all kinds of things to us. And then when we slap back, well, why are you being violent? The problem is that we don't normalize defending ourselves, right? Because it's not about violence, because the violence has been rained down on us for generations. And all we've been conditioned to do is bow our heads
and say thank you to whatever God they put in front of us and told us that that's the way. Be obedient to me and you'll have a long life. But who wants a long life if the long life is made up? First of all, I watched Fred Hampton's movie, so I'm revved up. Fred Hampton and said in the movie, we're going to all die. People of color are all going to die fighting for our rights, right? And he finished that by saying, we should be so lucky. And we should all have the attitude of, we should be so lucky to die with dignity and fight for what's right for us. And listen, I'm not out here standing by my window with a gun like the picture of Brother Malcolm, right? I'm not doing that. But what I'm saying is that at some point, liberals are always fighting with their words. We're so woke, we're asleep. They don't look what they did with this trial. They don't believe us. They don't think that we think we're enough to fight for. And that's the reason why they continue to treat us the way that they've been treating us. And I don't want to see white people being abused. But what I don't want to see is my people being abused anymore. I'm tired of my son not being able to walk down the street without being nervous because he's going to get pulled over and murdered. That is a reality for us. And people, it's been normalized in conversation, but it's not been normalized in our psyche because white people don't really understand what it's like to be afraid to turn a corner and a cop ends up behind your tail and you could possibly think that would be your last moment of life. And that is not something that is normalized in people's psyches. Now people are like, yeah, it's horrible. Black Lives Matter because they don't want their windows broken. But I want to know how many of you have accepted that as a truth and a belief and are willing to lay down your privilege to create equity for my children. And at the end of the day, many of us who have gotten out of the conditions that many of us come from are now waking up to the fact that we have to throw the rope back and we got to create a way and another underground railroad for our people because they're not going to do it for us.
Oh boy, I might throw I got the entire lineup here for the entire show. Producers, I appreciate everything that you all did. But Ida is speaking to my spirit here. And as such, we better take a break real quick, James. Play some music for us to soothe our soul. When we come back, I actually do want to talk a little bit about the Fred Hampton movie, just briefly, because I think it segues into all the rest of the conversations we're having this morning. We'll be right back with more Like It or Not after this.
Good morning, everyone. It is your DJ and co-host James Bubba Williams. I hope y'all are having a good morning. Make sure that y'all hit that like button, share, comment, and subscribe, y'all, so you always know when Like It or Not is going down, y'all.
My feelings messed up and I'm sprung. Something in your smile that it makes me wanna come over. Can I come over? I wanna come over. Thinking about your ocean. Swimming pool is closed and I'm in the deep end. The waves are washing over. I know I'm not sober. Can I come closer? I wanna come over. When you leave me like that, girl, don't do me like that. Ooh, when I think about that, I'll be coming right back. Oh,
shout out to everybody in the chat room. We appreciate y'all. Shout out to the Lions Den. Tira, I appreciate you.
I know you wanted some closure. You said you wanna move forward. I know we're not done. I'm thinking about our moments. I know I'm not sober. Can I come closer?
Rebecca! I miss you too, lady. It's some passion tea and lemon ginger tea mix. You know, I do my little mixed teas. But I pulled to you. I ran out of my honey this morning. Stilettos, what's up, sister? Afraid not, I see y'all. Love y'all, my Lion Squad. I like that. Shout out to the Lions Den.
I'm coming over. You know what's up, leave me like that.
Stingy, I appreciate that.
Talking to my mirror like I love you so much.
Infinite content, what's going on? Courtney, I appreciate that.
You can't kill my confidence, I think I'm the man. Tally all the I ever gave on my head. Lately I've been living like I can't take a loss. They ain't wanna
Mara, what's up? It's Genesis. Yes, it is.
You can't kill my confidence, I think I'm the man.
Brenda Johnson, good morning. Good morning, mama.
Back again like flu season. I broke records while loose leafing. I'm coming down my roof, leaving. Don't give a fuck, I don't care. Did the by my lonesome. No wonder now I'm on one. No shortcuts on that long run. All I really want is my share. Get him, I got him, I told him it's nothing. In the discussion.
Black Sky Blue Days. Yeah.
I hear him
I love Lions too. Leos.
They ain't been dropping no seeds in the sun, but
I'm just playing. Love my Leos.
I've been on go mode, show mode, showboat, rowboat, wave ride. Cool
Left is best. What's going on?
Party wet for the face ride. Annie up, penny down, hand me down, thrift store, old drip. New money, too funny. Oh, shorty talk about old. I'm on they now. Can't get a pass now. I'm a cash cow, keeping it brash now. It's trash now.
Y'all make sure y'all hit that like button.
Even on highs, you see in the skies the proof. You could just see in my eyes that there is no lies. I cannot disguise the truth.
Hi, my niece Sarah. Uncle Bubba loves you.
Couch with my chucks on, get the on with that. I'm big cool on the small chat, cause I know now that I'm all that. Got a hard guy on the ball cat, get the out of my face.
Talking to my mirror like I love you so much. Curving on my critics like I heard you, so what? You can't kill my confidence, I think I'm the man. Tally all the I ever gave on my head. Lately I've been living like I can't take a loss. They ain't wanna help me, that's what made me a boss. You can't kill my confidence, I think I'm the man. We don't give a that's what they don't understand.
So conscious. Crazy, huh? Crazy.
Nick, what's going on? Good morning, y'all. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Jimmy Neutron, what's going on? Bohemian Bubba. I appreciate that.
I was shot by Cupid. Say less, but every now and then I drop my 2 cents. Tunnel vision could
y'all hit them likes. Make sure that you are hitting that like button.
Movement. Don't ask
Hit
what we
the
doing.
like
Just know we always keep it
button.
moving.
Hit the like button. Hit the like button. Hit the like button.
Student to the game. You don't see me rocking chains, cause I think that is lame. All my brothers getting slain from the police. Blood stains leaking on the concrete. All my aunties always want me to stay up on the street.
Shout out to everybody that's joining us in the chat room, y'all. I appreciate y'all so much.
Constantly finding ways to level up my mind state. Ain't no justice for us, you can peep it in the crime rate. I left behind all those trying to set me up like a blind date. That duo sizzle just like a hot plate. Zooming on the Jackie like we got weight. I mean it's just a few grams, but I got faith, cause I was born in interfaith.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Like It or Not. The conversation is going to take the turn that it needs to take, because I'm gonna be honest with you, like I struggle on a regular basis with the fury of knowing the truth. And by the name of your current show that you do is Truth Serum. And so here you are, and I want everyone to go over and subscribe to her channel, Facebook, Twitter, all those things, YouTube, because sometimes the truth gets you in trouble, right?
Oh yeah.
And it telling the truth, and this is why we call the show now Like It or Not, and we tell the truth whether they like it or not. But if I were to be perfectly transparent, there are obviously some truths that America can't handle, because as soon as we start speaking them, they start killing us, right?
Oh yeah.
Ask Fred Hampton, right? You watch the movie, and I'm going to watch it because I'll be speaking with our comrade Rosa Clemente on Friday specifically about the movie and the legacy of Fred Hampton, which she so diligently has worked on. But they leave it to us, as you said off air. They leave it to people like you and people like me, this show and all of our different, programs where we're speaking truth to power. It's the expectation that we are going to be the ones to jump into the fray and solve these problems. Right. There's a cabal of people who look at what's happening around us and they say, oh, that's pretty bad that's going on. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. Now, what are you going to do about it? But the truth is that they leave us out here unfunded and alone, fighting these fights that historically have killed Black and brown people. So let's talk about that. Like in context, you could talk in context of the Fred Hampton movie that you watched, the reality of what they did to him, to Medgar Evers, to all the list of people that if we start naming names, when we start speaking truth to power for real, we become a threat to the system.
Absolutely. And, the first thing that I want to say when it comes to the chairman is that putting things into perspective, when we saw that young Puerto Rican woman, because I call my own people out just like I can call anybody else out, attack that little child in that hotel room. When she sat with Gail, one of the things that she said was, I'm only 22 years old. I'm a 22-year-old girl. What a privilege. What a privilege to be white passing and claiming your youth and your being a child. When Fred Hampton was 21 years old, when he was assassinated by our government for fighting for the people and left a legacy, the chairman left a legacy of an adoration for Blackness and unapologetic stand to fight for the humanity of our people, right? And so when I think about this country and its history, we've bought into this fear for so long and continue to live with this proverbial foot on our necks. And so that is why I speak the way that I speak, because the rage that lives in me, my children, I am a dream realized for the slaves that came before me on my family. My grandmother, knew how far back the slaves were. And because we were Caribbean, she's from Puerto Rico, she knew where the African stopped and the colonization began. And she preserved a lot of our history through, folklore. And we by word of mouth, we were able to keep our words, our music, and some of the stuff, which a lot of people in America don't have. But when we talk about this history, we have to be awakened to the reality that we are a dream realized. And so those ancestors died and fought because they were not all weak, like we like to say. Charlemagne reminded me of that when we say, I am not my ancestors. No, we probably couldn't be able to handle that. The fact that we are here is that we're a dream realized, and our descendants will be even further along. But we have to stop being afraid to speak. And I think that if people like me and you infect others into being unapologetic and bold and unafraid, that is the only way we will actually see change. We can't keep sweeping this stuff under the rug. And when you think about, those were our children. Your cerebral cortex isn't fully developed until you're 25 years old. Fred Hampton was murdered at 21. He was our son. He was our child, And so, and with all the respect to the chairman, because what he was able to do at that age, that tender age, is what he had to do because he did not have a choice. He did not have the privilege to rely on his youth. And so when we think about these things, we have to take into context the wholeness of the body of Blackness, right? And I'm going to sweep everything into Blackness, because though many of us try to separate ourselves from our Blackness is real. And our Blackness is the reason why we're still here, because it is dominant, and it's the reason why we're still here.
It's also the solution, right? Because here's the thing that I will never apologize for. It's like, having to survive the twin devils of this country, white supremacy, which we saw on January 6th in its fullest form. They just could not handle losing this election. And so because white supremacy had never taken a blow like that to its ego, it decided it would rather overthrow this country, marched up the steps of the Capitol to burn this country to the ground on behalf of Donald Trump. But Black people, we've had to survive that, as well as capitalism. When we saw in Austin, Texas last night, right, the so-called supply and demand jammed the prices up to $1,000 a night. And that's not just Black people who have to pay that price. Like, you have poor white people, homeless, unhoused people in those areas who are suffering. But Black people have had to survive both of these evils. And so to me, there's never a reason to apologize for our Blackness, because our Blackness holds the solution. Because if we were able to survive this mess, then surely we can give this country some pointers on how to, and I think one of the key words is collectivism, right? America is a selfish, individualistic nation that has built its entire philosophy around taking care of yourself and not worrying about anybody else. In fact, we frown upon, we look down on anybody who comes with the intention of helping other people. I want to tie this back into Fred Hampton, because, and Dwayne, if you have those clips from yesterday, I mean, this is as good of a week as any to pay a tribute to this brother every single day, because this young 21-year-old had such a vision for unity that crossed racial lines, unity that helped people understand where you really are in this class structure, right? Because I think a lot of people fool themselves because that they can look nice on Instagram. They think that they're balling, but in reality, the people who are really out here balling are the ones who are stealing all of our excess value from our labor, right? The people who are exploiting capital, exploiting labor on behalf of capital, right? The billionaires, the Jeff Bezos and the Mark Zuckerbergs, who've made billions upon billions in this pandemic while the rest of us are struggling. Like I know you look fly on Instagram, but the reality of it is you're in the same struggle as we are. If you need your labor, if you have to wake up and go to work for anybody or anything, you are a laborer. And Fred Hampton, he understood that at an age that, I mean, it blows me away. 21 years old.
We should be lucky. We should be so lucky.
We should be so. These are the same clips I played yesterday. We'll get even more clips, but let's play these first couple of clips of Fred Hampton, and just so that you can see why we are so in awe of his legacy, and why we should celebrate him the way that we're going to celebrate him now for the rest of this week and going forward. Let's play the first clip.
That's saying that no matter what color you are, there's only two classes, and that's saying there's a class over here and there's a class over there. And the reason that this class over here has never did anything to get this class off its back, because this is lower, this is upper, this is the oppressed, this is the oppressor, this is the exploited, this is the exploiter. And these people in this class have divided themselves. They say, I'm Black and I hate white people. I'm white and I hate Black people. I'm Latin American and I hate hillbillies. I'm hillbilly and I hate Indians. So we fighting amongst each other. We're not a racist organization because we understand that racism is an excuse used for capitalism, and we know that racism is a byproduct of capitalism. They set up this problem in order to exploit me and other people like me. And why they want to get rid of me? Because I'm saying something that might wake up some other exploited people and some other oppressed people, and if all these people ever get together, then these pigs that are exploiting us, we'll be able to run them into the lake. That's why they want to get rid of them.
Ida.
I'm speechless. You know, I think about the young lords, my people, and how they participated in this movement, and just the understanding that this racial reality, which has always been the greatest distraction, because it's the greatest distraction, and it is also the greatest reality, because the mistreatment of Black people in this country is not a figment of our imagination, but it works as a function as maintaining this toxic capitalism that keeps us all down. You know, just to see someone to dedicate their life to the betterment of the people, and knowing that he was not going to have a long life. He lived with that understanding and accepted it as a reality and considered it a privilege. Just to think the way that many of us now, who you said think are balling, I mean, I look at it from this perspective. If we have a nuclear assault on this country, if you don't have a bomb shelter, you don't have the resources to create a safe place for you and your family, you're probably not elite. You know what I'm saying? You're probably not elite, because that's really what it's about, is having enough money to be able to take care of your own, right? But what I wanted to say is that you talked about collectivism and the way this country prides itself in this individual alleged pulling yourself up by the bootstrap and attaining these goals that you set for yourself. We are a village people, Ben. That's where we come from. And that was the first thing that was taken away from us. Right? We are a village people. We raised our children together. That is our history. That is where we come from. And they have stripped us of that. And now we employ the principles and the ideologies and the beliefs of white supremacy upon each other, because they have taught us to do that, to maintain us divided. But people of color throughout the world are a village people. And anywhere you go in the world where people are melanated, the grandmothers are revered and lauded, as well as the children are protected and cared for by the entire village. And then we come to this country and these Eurocentric ways where we start making fun of old people, shaming people for getting older. That is all an assault on the principles that maintain our villages. And we have to fight to preserve that. We have to fight to preserve that. And that's what the chairman was doing.
And what I also noticed he was doing so long ago and doing it so precisely, he was making coalitions with poor white people, working white people, right? And unlike today, I want to be sure, because today there's an attempt to revise history with regard to who he reached out to, right? I believe it was their nickname was the Hillbillies, and it escapes me, but they wore a Confederate flag on their hats in this particular video. And so because of that, you have people in 2020 and 2021 saying that he was willing to work with racists, when in reality, those boys wore those hats because they were anti-racist and they wanted to connect with their community to get rid of the racism. There was never any triangulation or bipartisanship between Chairman Fred Hampton and racism. Right. And so what they're doing today is they're trying to revise it for this thing that we see online, right? On Twitter, we say everybody who wants us to line up with the right and align with like the Proud Boys, entire video channels of so-called leftists saying that we should align with these fascists. And then they're co-opting the name of Fred Hampton to do those things. Could you just speak on that real quick before we go to another break?
First of all, if you don't get the chairman's name out of your crunchy ass mouth, keep his name out your mouth, first and foremost. But what I was going to say is that first, let's just live in the real world right now and stop with this who's racist and who's not racist. The world that we live in has indoctrinated white people into believing that they are better than people of color simply because they are white. And they have conditioned people of color to believe that they are less than because they are people of color. And those are things that are in the DNA of this world now. And it is something that we have to work on daily to get out of. So when we say, when somebody points out that a white person is racist, I say to you, yeah, okay. Because they've been indoctrinated to, this is part of the work. This is part of the play now. And these people who walk around saying, well, I'm not racist, or this person isn't racist. Really, do you live a life that is built on the sweat, blood, and tears of the slaves of this country? Do you live a life that is based on the sweat, blood, and tears of the immigrants of this country, the child labor in Asia? Are you living a life that is made up of, yes, you are racist, and unless you are willing to put your privilege down and saying, I will die so that a Muslim person can walk down the street without being attacked, so that an Asian old man doesn't have to get murdered, so that Black people can get what they are due in this country, so that immigrants in this country do not have to hide their illnesses for fear of being sent back to countries that were destabilized by this government in the first place and don't want to die at the hands of violence. Until you are willing to do that, then you are enjoying the fruits of white supremacy and therefore employing racist views towards the world. And I don't care what anybody says. If you got a white mama and a white daddy and you Black, I'm not trying to offend them, but your white mama and your white daddy are not worried about getting pulled over by the cops. So that is the reality that we live in. Yeah. That is just reality. And we need to take our emotions out of it, because that's just the way it is right now. And the way that we fix it is by accepting the truth and then saying, okay, how do we, through economics, because this is all economics. They don't care about us. This ain't moral. This is all about money. We've always been the greatest pawn in the game. It's all about money, right? They don't care about us. But if we can also see ourselves as a resource instead of always as cattle, then we can probably understand how to mobilize ourselves so that there can be change, right? And all of the communities have different issues to address. You know, the Asian community has its issues. They have certain privileges in this country that other minorities don't, still are treated poorly. But that doesn't make it better. Like, they still not living their best life and existence if they still got to walk around being afraid of getting popped in the face on a train. So we just have to acknowledge these truths so that we can find common ground so that we can have change. And it all begins with economics, and we got to stop lying about that.
I want to, because there's Ida, we're gonna thank you for joining me for the whole episode, because we're gonna unpack the rest of this, because on the flip side of it, it is also like, what do we what do you and I, people like you and I, what do we do, and how do we respond in this type of system? But we want to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to bring up Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, and we're going to discuss Medicare for all, and we're going to discuss the potential cuts to Medicare as a result of the reconciliation process to try to get American people a bailout, right? We're going to discuss those things with him as soon as we come back from this break. James, take us to a break, and we'll be right back with more Like It or Not after this.
Shout out to everybody that's joining us this morning in the chat room, y'all. Hope y'all are enjoying the show thus far. Woo, the truth that's being spilled is some serious. New music for y'all. Can't stand being. Miss Mika, good morning. Chuck, shout out to you, man. I see you in the chat. Appreciate you being here. Rebecca's still hanging out with us in the chat room, y'all. Make sure that y'all say hey to Rebecca.
For me, there ain't no one.
Angela Newman, good morning.
But you just couldn't be bothered.
Turn this up a little bit.
What love is about. It gets me 'cause there ain't no doubt.
Sugar Booger. I love that name. What's up, Sugar Booger?
You made me beg and you made me crawl.
Rebecca, I definitely will. I was going to keep playing it too. I said I was going to save it. I saved us a couple of tracks for tomorrow.
Still I'm loving you. But I made up my mind. I'm gonna pack my bags up, walk out the
Right, Church Wrong Pew, good morning. Hope y'all are enjoying this. Make sure that you hit that like button, y'all. Hit that like button, hit that like button. And while we at it, you are liking this track, go ahead, drop them lions in the chat room, wherever you are. Drop them lions in the chat if you're feeling this track. Last couple days, it sure is, isn't it?
I'm gonna miss you, but I'll be gone. You know I don't wanna fight ya, but there is something about ya that makes me wanna scream and shout. You left me hanging down and out. I think you never leave me, but you cheated and deceived me. You never cared for me at all. You had me at your beck and call. It's true, I'm a sucker for you. You're no good till
now, hey, what's going on, sister? Martha, that's okay. We still love you though.
You'll see me no more, no. You better leave me alone. I miss you, but I'm sick and tired of loving you. I don't know why, just know that I do. Please leave me alone. I'm gonna miss you, but I'll be gone.
That was I'll Be Gone by Nikki G, y'all. That was a dope track. I must say I love that one.
So good in my sweater. Here's my favorite weather.
Got another track coming up for y'all during our next break. Just gonna let somebody just sing to you. Dope track, I must say.
Yeah, wish we could stay here forever. Each day you keep getting better. Gotta love you close, and I need you close.
Shout out Lori Huff, we appreciate your super chat.
Yeah, na 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 na. Every day, look away. Na 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 na. Every day, look away. We could be good friends.
Skip Bayless, I love you too.
We could be good friends. We could be good friends.
Buck Odie, I appreciate that. We're gonna play as much new music as we can. I got so much stuff over the weekend. So this week is all new music week. That's the whole goal. We just hope we got enough to get you through Friday.
We could be good friends. We could be good friends, yeah. We could be good friends. We could be good friends, yeah. Each time you leave me, it's harder. Feels like I'm stuck underwater. Can't hold my.
Shout out to everybody that's watching this. Make sure that you hit that like button, please. Mama Bina 8, good morning, my East Point sister. Alicia D, I appreciate that super chat. Thank you so much. Ibrahim, I appreciate the love. David Morris, yes sir. Lion Posse.
We could be good friends. We could be good friends, yeah. We could be good friends. 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 We could be good friends, yeah. We could be good friends. We could be good friends, yeah. Na 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 na. Every day, look away. Na 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 na. Every day, look away.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, coming back to the screen, we have the one and only Benjamin Dixon, y'all. Y'all give it up for Ben.
Hey man, those songs, I appreciate you, James. That music actually helps me get from one segment to the next because the news that we have to cover oftentimes has me ready to throw my camera out the window. So I appreciate you, man.
Right.
I'm excited. I'm excited to be joined by Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. He's a doctor, epidemiologist, progressive educator, author of Healing Politics and Medicare for All, A Citizen's Guide, and the host of America Dissected, a podcast from Crooked Media. And he's also the writer of a Substack called incision.substack.com. Dr. Sayed, thank you so much for joining me.
Ben, thank you so much for having me here today.
It's a pleasure. I want to start with I want to start with something that you said. There's a lot for us to talk about, but I want to start with what you said on Twitter about vaccines. This is what you said. Don't get me wrong. Vaccines are the most powerful tool in our public health arsenal right now, but they are not and were never the tool. Instead, vaccines are one tool among many that must be used together to bring this pandemic to its end. And the reason I want to start there is because in our communities, communities of color, particularly the Black community, like we have an aversion to the idea of taking vaccines in the first place. Right. One of the number one arguments that I have with some family members and definitely a whole lot of friends is whether or not we should take this vaccine. There's a broader conversation to be had. But once you tweeted that and once you stated that, I felt like we should discuss that portion of it. What are your thoughts with regard to the vaccine and the fear that's present in a lot of communities of color, particularly because we have justified fear because of the history of this country? How do we overcome that to use it as the tool that you say that it is?
Yeah, Ben, let me tell you, I used to be the health commissioner in the city of Detroit, and my job in the largest majority Black city in the country was to empower people to make the best choices when it came to their health. I believe deeply that vaccines are part of that choice. And the reason why is because they've had a huge success in saving lives, particularly when it comes to diseases that disproportionately affect Black and brown people. That said, we have to acknowledge the fact that we can't just sit here and say, trust the science, as if the science hasn't exploited Black folks throughout the history of this country, just like every other major establishment has. And so when I say that from a position of empathy and respect for acknowledging that history and also speaking to the work that has been done to try and address that. I believe deeply that the role of science, the fundamental core of science, is skepticism. So people who are being skeptical are doing the thing that we do in science all the time. But the antidote to skepticism in science is data. And when you look at this data, it shows that this vaccine is safe and effective. In fact, I had the privilege of speaking to one of the lead scientists who helped to create the Moderna vaccine. Her name is Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett. And we had a conversation specifically about the mistrust of these vaccines and where that comes from. And she said, look, at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge the fact that people who look like me, and she's a Black woman, young Black woman, were in rooms in the past when we were making decisions about these vaccines. And they are now. In fact, she was one of the lead researchers who helped develop that vaccine. And I asked her, what's your message to Black folks who are looking at this and saying, this was created in less than a year. I don't know how they did that when the fastest they've ever done it in the past was 4 years. Tell me why you think I should take this. And she said, look, at the end of the day, this virus has taken 2 to 3 times as many Black lives per capita as it has white lives. And that's just lives. Now, when we talk about livelihoods, the impact that it has had on majority Black communities, like the one that I used to be responsible for, is unspeakable. And we have a responsibility to protect our own. And when she was talking about her work, she said, look, I'm doing my work out of love for my own community. And that was really powerful to me. But I hear folks when they say, look, I'm skeptical, I need more proof. And my point is to say, look, I hear you, and it's good to have that skepticism. But you can't let your cousins post on Facebook or your friends thing on Instagram stand in the way of you getting active, true information from the folks who are on the front lines. And so I encourage everybody to get that vaccine. Do your reading, really do your reading. You can go right to those government websites where they've shown all the data about the vaccine. But in the end, it is critical that we bring this pandemic to an end, because we know that the short-term side effects of this pandemic have meant many people dying, nearly 500,000 people dying, and the long-term consequences we're still starting to understand. And so if it's between that or a vaccine whose data shows that it is both safe and very effective, I'll pick the vaccine every day. Both me and my wife have been vaccinated, and that's because we've been able to look at that science and have that conversation for ourselves. And so I hope that folks will do the same. But I hear you on that skepticism. And look, we've got to speak directly to that history and the work that we need to do to address it so that folks can really trust that science when we talk about it.
I want to ask just a question from just a health perspective. A lot of these people who are talking about getting the coronavirus and getting over it, because so many people have. Can you speak quickly to the long-term effects of having COVID-19? Because I know people who've had COVID-19 and are not fully healthy right now and are still struggling with the after effects of what COVID did to their lungs. And it's not something you just are guaranteed to just pop through and get over.
Yeah, that's right, Aida. And I really appreciate you bringing up that that question. We know that about 30 to 35% who are going to be infected with COVID-19 will end up being what we call long haulers, meaning that they've got symptoms well into the future after the first symptoms and the first infection has subsided. And that's because this virus does some really odd things in a number of parts of your body. And people think that, well, I'm going to get over it and I'll be immune, and that was that. But no, you're not really certain that you're going to actually fully get over it, that you're not going to have symptoms that last months afterwards. And then the second point is that this virus has the ability to evolve and to evolve very quickly. And right now we're talking about these variants that have evolved in different parts of the world that are spreading a lot faster. And some of these variants, our science suggests, are actually resistant to our body's natural immunity that you pick up after having been infected by the original version of the coronavirus. And so, the assumption that you're making that I'll be okay after I get over it, that's not a good assumption to make because it's just not true. And then the other assumption that you'll make that, I'll be immune after I got the virus is also just not true. And so the key thing that we have to do right now is to protect ourselves from this infection. And the best single way to do that right now, aside from doing the obvious things like wearing masks and physically distancing and following those protocols, is to get a vaccine. And so, to me, I just try and take this really rationally, which is you're thinking about a set of trade-offs, costs and benefits. And the costs of the coronavirus vaccine are very low and the benefits are very high, whereas the costs of getting the virus itself are very high. And the benefits are nothing. So to me, it's an obvious trade-off.
Let me follow up with what you were saying on your Substack. Again, your Substack is incision.substack.com, and encourage everyone to go and subscribe to it so that you can get this kind of information. So you've taken the vaccine. And you understand the suspicion that communities of color, particularly Black folks, we have a long history of this country taking advantage of us, using science to vilify us in some ways. But you understand that suspicion. And I love the way you justified it. You said skepticism is a key tenet of the scientific process, right? But the resolution to that skepticism has to be the data. I appreciate that. You said on your Substack that vaccines are not the only tool in ending this. And I'm wondering what other tools did you have in mind? Because we just got done with a conversation about collectivism versus the individualism in this country. And I feel like one of the biggest things that we could have done was simply wear masks and self-quarantine and stay at home, those type of things. Is that what are you referencing that, or is there a whole nother set of tools that we should also be aware of?
No, Ben, that's exactly right. Look, our public health infrastructure, and for reasons that have everything to do with corporate profits in the healthcare industry, our public health infrastructure was anemic at best when the coronavirus hit. And we were unable to do those basic collective things like wear a mask because it's better for me and the people around me, or maybe forego that extra engagement with someone or that visit to someone's house because, well, we've got a really active viral pandemic going on. Those kinds of collective interventions are critical. And what we're seeing right now is that, thankfully, cases are on the decline, hospitalizations are on the decline, and deaths are on the decline. But the problem with it is that less coronavirus is not the same as no coronavirus. And so what we're seeing is that governors are taking this opportunity to ease some of the restrictions that they'd put down that were so critical to bringing this virus transmission down in the first place. And the problem with that, right, is that you may think that you've beaten coronavirus because the numbers are looking good, but all we're doing is giving it more oxygen to come back. And particularly when we have these variants, I'm really worried about what that means. And so, yes, we've got to work really hard to get everybody vaccinated, but that doesn't mean that we give up on all of the other things that we know work to prevent coronavirus. And so we've got to be thinking about these vaccines as one tool among many tools to beat this pandemic. And we can't be giving up on the ones that we know work because the vaccine is, quote unquote, on its way. And I'm really worried about what the impact might be if we give this virus more oxygen, more room to exploit our unwillingness to keep pressing on with the basic collective public health interventions that admittedly in this country, we just haven't been very good at from the very beginning.
And this connects directly to your work because you're a fierce advocate for Medicare for all. And as you speak on the the fragility of our infrastructure here, our medical infrastructure. Speak to your efforts to push for Medicare for all, because I think that's something we all agree on, that in a country as wealthy as America, like it only makes sense that we would have a healthcare industry that is not driven by profits.
You know, I went to medical school because I believed that it was critical to learning how to heal. You know, for me, I grew up just outside Detroit, but my parents are immigrants from Egypt. And so I could travel 15 hours and get to Alexandria, where I'd hang out with my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, my cousins. My grandmother, she's a victim of the kind of inattention and lack of investment that we've made in so many parts of the world that have been colonized. She never got to go to school despite being the smartest, wisest person I've ever met in my life. She lost 2 of her babies before the age of 1. Now, here's the crazy thing. In 15 hours, I traveled 10 years difference in life expectancy. I could go 15 minutes south into the city of Detroit and go to a community where the life expectancy was more similar to Egypt than it was to the county in which I was growing up. And that to me was astounding. I went to medical school because I thought that learning how to be a doctor was going to help me to heal that, except for I saw up front and center that the healthcare system itself was part of the problem. The way that we treat low-income people, the way we treat Black people, the way that we excuse implicit and explicit bias in our system, the way that we commodify people's bodies is everything that's wrong with healthcare in our country. And we've seen the consequences of it firsthand when it came to this pandemic. I've been working on health reform for a long time now. I had the privilege of running for governor of Michigan. I ran on a single payer platform. I was a national surrogate for Bernie Sanders, mostly focused on Medicare for all. When we were building the Democratic platform, I was appointed by Senator Sanders as one of 8 delegates to the Biden-Sanders task force on healthcare. And I had the privilege of carrying the Medicare for all amendment to the platform, though it got denied in the platform committee at this DNC. I've recently written a book with my co-author, Dr. Micah Johnson, called Medicare for All, A Citizen's Guide. And here's the reason why. Because if we want to understand why in this country we systematically and consistently fail to protect the bodies of low-income people, of Black people, then we have to understand the way that racism and poverty have intertwined themselves into our healthcare system. And the way that we assume that healthcare being a business is the way to go has systematically excluded these folks who need healthcare most and extracted from the rest of us. We spend 18 cents per dollar of every dollar spent in our entire economy on healthcare. And for that, we get middling to poor health outcomes. And that's because we do not invest in everybody the same way. And if we believe that healthcare is a human right, that's not just lip service. That means that no matter who you are, where you are, who your parents are, the color of your skin, how you pray, who you love, that you should have access to healthcare if and when you get sick in your community. And that healthcare should be worth the same as the healthcare provided to anybody else. And so this is about a right that we decide to invest in people. And then it's about all of the downstream consequences of doing that thing, which are that when the government is responsible for paying for your health insurance, then it takes a huge stake in making sure that you stay healthy in the first place because it doesn't want to have to pay those dollars in the back end. But we don't do that in this country. And it's part of the reason why COVID-19 has been so damaging in our country relative to other countries. And I'll leave you with a stat on this. We account for 4% of the entire world's population and 23% of all COVID-19 deaths. We have 5 times the global average of deaths per capita to COVID-19. And that's not because we don't have money. That's not because we don't have power. That's because we are unwilling to invest in the collective and do the basic thing that every other high-income country in the world has done.
You know, I wanted to ask, because when we have the Medicare for all conversation, capitalism's one of its greatest tricks is to convince poor people and working class people that they too can be billionaires. So they fight for that right. And so they bite their noses to spite their faces. One of the biggest arguments that I'm always faced with when I talk about Medicare for all is how it's going to affect insurance and the people who already have insurance, and they don't want the quality of their health care to decline because now they have to share with everybody else, and blah, 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 all the talking points that the dummies always give you when they've been mind tricked into believing that they're going to be Elon Musk one day. So what is it that you can say, because you are a doctor, and a lot of people say the doctors are going to suffer when they do this. How do you address these talking points with people from where you stand, because you stand at the nucleus of it all, right. And probably can empower us into being able to have these conversations with people when they tell us these things?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that folks right now are worried about things getting worse. My first book, Healing Politics, was about an epidemic of insecurity. And the thing that insecurity does to you is tells you that things can't get better. It's always just going to get worse. And so when we come out and say, look, our system is so bad that here are the things we could have, it almost sounds too good to be true. And folks go back to their insecurity and say, well, there's no way that what you're selling me isn't just a bucket of lies, and it's not going to work out. But here's the thing. The health insurance industry exists as it stands because it is so bad that everything we say about how we could fix it sounds too good to be true. And then they spend millions of dollars both lobbying politicians to say the same things and or spending millions more to advertise to us, to fearmonger about how we would lose our choice, about how it was going to cost too much, about how it would ration healthcare. Here's the thing. These health insurers are doing exactly that. 15 cents on the dollar for every dollar spent in healthcare goes to overhead to the insurance company. Their CEOs are making tens of millions of dollars while tens of millions of people are losing health insurance because we're the only country in the world that conditions getting health insurance on being employed. And at the same time, right, they're rationing our care. You know, if you've ever used your health insurance, right, if you have the poor fortune of having private health insurance and then getting sick, you know that they're trying to ration you because you have to fight for every dollar of care you already paid for. And then they invent these things like deductibles, which nobody knows what that means, or copays, which nobody knows what that means, which are ways for the insurance industry to take insurance on their own profit by making sure that you're going to have to pay extra if you actually get sick to use the care. And so they're telling you what doctors you can see, how much healthcare you can get, and meanwhile telling you that any change in the system would actually benefit, would hurt you rather than benefit you. And so, you know, the last point that you asked about doctors, look, the median doctor today supports single payer healthcare. You know why? Because it used to be back in the day that as a doctor, you could own your own business. You could start your own practice, graduate residency, and you're good to go. Now, right, because of the ways that major healthcare corporations are able to negotiate with each other, they squeeze out the smaller guy. And so you cannot compete because the prices for care that you can get because you're a small owner versus the big hospital down the street are so low that you're stuck working for them anyway. So you're making less money over the course of your life. And so doctors are realizing that they're no longer the owners of the healthcare system, not at all. Instead, you've got a bunch of CEOs with MBAs making tens of millions of dollars off your labor. And that's what's happened now.
We are speaking with Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. And I want everyone who's watching and listening to go to incision.substack.com to follow you, because what you're saying here is so critical to the conversation. I have two more questions for you. The first one is this. How do we simply convey? I think the problem is with us, the people who are on the receiving end of this neglect on behalf of our government and on behalf of capitalism driving our medical system. Because for me, it's really simple. It should be completely unacceptable for people to make profits off of the suffering of other people, right? The fact that there are middlemen in this conversation in the first place and shareholders in the middle of this in the first place, and the profit motive when we're dealing with people who are struggling with COVID, we're dealing with people who are struggling with cancer, right? We're dealing with people who are struggling with diabetes, HIV, leukemia, like just like we're talking about an entire industry that has the greed of humanity at the center, profiting off of people who are dealing with the most painful times of their lives. It's a twofold question. One, how do we get that message across? Because I think it's anathema. I think it's just completely disgusting that this is a reality in this country. But two, what does it say about like how do we change the minds of the people to not accept this kind of BS?
Yeah, well, you know, the hard part of this, right, is that we are in a moment in our country where for the past 40 years, we have watched as all of the major public goods that government is supposed to offer us in a high income society have been pawned off to major corporations for the exclusion of the poorest and the extraction of everyone else. And when you offer public goods as a for-profit enterprise, This is a necessary outcome because people are trying to make money. So if you don't have enough money to give them, you're going to be excluded. And for everyone else, they're going to pull as much money out of you as they can. And we've got to show folks the context of this, that it doesn't actually have to be this way. But the other point is this. The point is being made every single day. Every day, somebody's denied their care from the insurance company. Every day that they have to go into bankruptcy because they have to pay their deductible. Every day they're told they can't see the doctor of their choice. The argument is already being made. What we have to do is two things. Number one, we cannot give up on a future where this is the case, right? We look at this and say, well, Senator Sanders ran twice and he didn't get elected, so it's impossible. No, that's exactly what they want you to think. The second is we have to create spaces for people to organize around this issue. We have to invest in those spaces and people have to come together around it. Whether it is doctors coming together to finally unionize as the labor that they really are, or it's everyday folks who are being hit by the system coming together to organize together in their local communities to hold their politicians accountable. We have a whole chapter in our book, Medicare for All Citizens Guide, called Organizing versus Advertising. Because in the end, look, the industry is always going to have more money, right? They spent here's a crazy thing, $151 million in 2020 alone to make sure that instead of actually doing more to invest in public healthcare, that instead, right, any relief package was going to just hand off money to them to keep people insured, which the insurance companies could have done in the first place. Because by the way, they made bumper profits during the pandemic for a bunch of different reasons. And we write about this. I wrote about this in the incision. And so the thing we have to remember is that our anger and rage cannot be alone. We have to do it together, right? Because if we do it together, we can focus it in on the kind of change that actually does create a world where this kind of thing doesn't happen in the future. The last point I want to make is that the number one barrier in our country to Medicare for All and to a number of other public goods is racism. In fact, Heather McGee, my good friend, just published a book today called The Sum of Us and talks about the way that racism interferes with our ability to invest in public goods. Because, of course, as Aida made that fantastic point, right, people see themselves as a country of future millionaires, and they think of themselves as investing into a system to pay for public goods, quote unquote, for people like them. Right. And the problem, right, with that attitude where we are unwilling to invest in one another writ large as humans, right, and the racism that's implicit in talking about people like us, that keeps us from being able to invest in these broad public goods like Medicare for All. And I'll remind you just our history, and we talk about this in the book, right? Medicare, the biggest stumbling block to getting Medicare done was that Southerners kept fear-mongering that Medicare would force a desegregation of the hospitals, which of course should have happened in the first place, right? But it did, and it actually did desegregate hospitals, which is a really good thing. But that racism was used as a tool to try and impede Medicare itself. And so we've got to see this thing playing out. We've got to take it on. We've got to call it out. And we've got to be willing as a country to make the investment that benefits all of us.
I want you to get in there with a couple of other questions here.
No, I just, it's interesting. Every time I speak to other progressives, I always feel like I walk away knowing more. I learned something because I think that the ability, when we have these conversations in this country and we talk about immigrants, I'm the child of two different types of people who came to this country. And we don't realize the effects that all of this false information that upholds toxic capitalism in this country continues to plague us and impede us of our own progress. And so when we talk about racism, and we talk about racism every day because racism lives every day, it is important to understand how it functions and how all of these things, from the healthcare system to the education system to Wall Street, how all of them are super, super rich at the expense of our ignorance and at the expense of us. And so, I want to be able to help in the way that I can. So for me, when it comes to talking about Medicare for All, and I go into the communities and I talk to the people because honestly, that's where you do your real advocacy is not on Twitter. Being able to explain to people what I wanted to ask you, because you worked in Detroit. When we come to these communities that are impoverished, where the education system is subpar and people don't have access to the information, how do we what are some of the ways and resources that we can give to the people so that they can be informed on who to vote for in their communities? Because people in affluent communities know exactly who they're going to vote for, the people that are going to protect their property and their taxes. But when it comes to our communities, we don't know because so many of these politicians are negotiable. And Medicare for All is so important because when we talk about the healthcare system and the pandemic exposed the ugliness of it in this country and how it affects, our communities. What are some of the resources that we can use to help people understand why it's important to really find out these politicians who are not working or misappropriating funds on their behalf?
Yeah, that's a really, really important point, Ida. I'll say a couple things about that. Number one, I often think that folks have it so hard. I mean, the consequences of racism, they rob you of so many of the dignities and the opportunities that when you and people like you, because of the nature of our segregation, face the same experience, it leaves you thinking this is just how life is. And unfortunately, right, that's the thing, is that it's not how life is. It's just life is for a group of people who've been systematically marginalized and oppressed out of basic access to the resources that so many other people take for granted. And the thing we have to be able to do is be better at helping people connect their lived experience to the system that created that lived experience, right? Because people, it's not necessarily that people need information. It's just that people have that experience, and our job is to connect that experience to that information. And I think when folks see that and they can map the things that they have to go through every single day to the choices that are made by powerful people in spite of them, I think it makes the work clear and obvious. And then we have to have a very clear place where folks can go to become a part of that work, right? And become a part of that organizing, even if it's just 5, 10, 15 minutes a day, right? Being able to be a part of the movement to build power on behalf of Black and Brown communities in this country. The second point is the point that you made about politicians, which is a really important one, right? And unfortunately, a lot of the mistake has actually been on the part of the progressive movement. I hear all the time that you can't organize in lower income communities and Black communities, and this is usually said by well-meaning, if completely mistaken, white progressives. And I just think it's important for us to call out the way that racism sometimes it wraps itself around our most benevolent aims. And so, that point, I think, is a really important one. And we have to be invested in organizing long-term in Black and Brown communities because, we have a responsibility as a movement, right, to be bringing everyone along rather than saying, well, because of our own biases or our own assumptions about people's values and opportunities, that we are going to go completely forego that. And I see that, across the country, unfortunately. It happens right here in Michigan. And so, the progressive movement collectively has to be real thoughtful about the way that racism plays out in the kind of decisions that we make about advocating for people. Because in the end, if we don't center the people who suffer most from the system that we're trying to change and revolutionize, then we're failing the point.
Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, thank you so much for joining us. And I do want to just say again, everyone who is watching or listening, I want you to go to incision.substack.com and register for his Substack so that you can continue to get this wonderful information. And we appreciate your time this morning.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. And I really appreciate a great conversation.
Pleasure's ours. James, take us to a quick break. When we come back, I have a lot of questions for Aida Rodriguez before we get out of here for today's episode. So give us some music and we'll be right back with more Like It or Not after this.
Thank you, Doctor, so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed it, and we most definitely enjoyed you on the show this morning. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I said I got a good track for y'all that I'm going to play next. Here we go. This is called Angel Among Us.
Like the world is is on our side. Nothing can bring.
Shout out to everybody that's in the chat room. Make sure that you hit that like button, share, comment, subscribe, so you always know when the morning trap is going down, y'all.
Baby, when we're together, you and I, your touch sends chills down my spine.
Abundant G, I love y'all too. Appreciate that. Real 88, what's going on, sir?
Take me away, girl, to a new level. It's 7 on earth, on earth. I found an angel. I found an angel. Angel, found an angel. Ooh, baby, people would travel far and wide just to see how your halo shines so bright. Ooh, baby, did you fall from paradise? Wherever we go, I'm on cloud 9, so high. Yeah. I got a brand new love. You take me away, girl, to a new level.
This man is singing.
Who is this?
Vincent Vega.
I found an angel. I found my angel. Come on. I found my angel.
I know, Ben. I know.
This is good stuff.
Man, when I heard this one, I was just like, goodness, wait a minute, the bridge.
Away, girl, to a new level. It's 7 on earth. On
Shout out Purple Rain Hearts. Yes, everyone is grooving right now. Somebody said this that stink face you make when you hear something.
Ida, you know that artist? You know this particular artist?
No, I just Shazammed it because I was like, that's going on the playlist right now. I'm not gonna lie to you, try to act like I knew that, but I was like, I just looked it up, Vincent Vega.
No, because my thing is like we you know, not we, James does such a deep dive into music that we can play on the internet, like copyright royalty free music, and so he has like, James, you've been able to like pull up some jams, but like that one's like,
yeah, I think this, as much stuff as I found over the weekend, this whole week will be all new music. Of course, I got to play a couple of tracks when Rebecca comes back tomorrow because I'm just like, I need Rebecca here for this one.
Okay, I have two requests.
All new music.
I have two requests for the end of the show, right? You know my two favorites, the one with the bass line and the sister singing, and then the one with the sister rapping. Pull up in the Phantom. Like, those are my special requests.
Oh,
like
okay,
other people,
I got you.
If you want special requests, pull up the graphic of the Voices app. I want to pull that up on the screen so everyone can see it. We're going to start using this app a whole lot more so that you can get access to the DJ, send your request in directly to the DJ, or if you want to send some feedback to us, you can use this screen. If you have an Apple, an iPhone, and God forbid you have an Android, use the QR code and download the app. And our group code to join the Like It or Not community, the group code is 213756. And if you want to send requests or even just a video of you jamming to the DJ, send it to us and we will, it's very likely that we will share it on the show. So make sure you're aware of that. Whatever you send to us is a possibility that we will share it with our broader community. Ida, I want to talk to you we only have a few more minutes here, but I want to speak to you about your work and this how do we actually accomplish our goals as, for lack of a better word, revolutionaries, right? Because the stuff that you say, the stuff that I try my best not to say, but I end up saying it anyway, because the truth is the truth and it is what it is. That kind of stuff gets us in trouble. But I follow your work, and you are you're many things, but one of the things you're a comedian, and you have a Netflix series. Talk to me about how that kind of work that could be seen as, because I need your help for me. I'm asking this question for me. Like the stuff that can be seen as glamorous or Hollywood even being the vessel through which you do your revolutionary work.
Well, I guess one of the biggest things that you can say that is indicative of how that plays out in Hollywood is that I'm not a household name. You don't see the big celebrities tweeting or reposting my stuff because they don't want to upset anybody, or they don't want to be associated with someone who might be too radical or militant. I think it's hilarious that it is considered radical, militant, and revolutionary to fight for the basic needs and treatment of people of color, Black people in this country, that it is considered radical and militant to say we deserve to be treated like whole human beings. Right. So, that plays itself in this system where I know some people don't want to do business with me because they feel that I'm problematic. People think I hate white people, and I don't. I don't hate white people at all. Actually, I have white friends. Isn't that what white people say? And they know I don't hate white people. What I don't do is tolerate in any way of my life, and that my work is married to my advocacy. I don't want to do it unless I can use it as a tool to make the conditions better for our people. No different than Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali did with his boxing. Bruce Lee did with his, with his Jeet Kune Do and so on and so forth. So those are my heroes, right? I don't idolize people created by a machine that, are used as tools to maintain white supremacy in place. And I don't want to be one of those tools. So for me, it is, comedy has a lot of sexism and racism and intertwined. I come under fire a lot for some of the things that I say, and people tell me to stick to comedy. And those are the same people who idolize George Carlin for not sticking to comedy. So I understand that. And so, it's harder for me, and I understand that. And I'm not a victim. I'm a victor. So I wear my cape proudly, and I go out and I write jokes about the things that speak to us, because a lot of times we are the punchline. And a lot of racism in comedy for a long time, where people have, you've seen the respectability politics, you've seen, constant sexism and racism, the mocking of our names, the mocking of our attitudes. There's this Black woman character that shows up in comedy constantly by way of men and women when we're expressing, the sentiment and the attitude of a Black woman, which is racist and sexist. So I understand all that. I wake up every morning understanding all that, and I still put on, my Jordans, because I do that too. And I go on stage and I tell my jokes, and I don't care what anybody says, because for me, this is about telling our truth, and whichever way I can get it out, if it comes with a punchline, I'm gonna do that.
I was listening, shout out to our comrade Rosa Clemente. I was listening to her Instagram Live last night, and she was discussing the movie Judas and the Black Messiah, and how the expectations of that movie was for it to be Hollywood, right? And for it to tell the story of Fred Hampton incorrectly. But instead, what people got, I haven't seen it yet, but just listening to all I'm waiting to see it, was that was an instance where the creative arts, Hollywood per se, and I don't want to call it Hollywood because there's so many things that are attached to it, but this is an example of where an art form was used expressly for revolutionary purposes. But a lot of times, and I wonder if you ever face this, some of the biggest criticisms that we get are from people who we consider to be comrades, because instead of running out into the streets with AK-47s, we're running into every avenue that we possibly can, be it media, be it comedy, be it film, and we're telling our stories so that we can convey it to people in a way that they can accept it and really change their lives. Do you often run into that as well, in terms of like expectations from people who, listen, we're fighting for the same thing. We're fighting for the basic dignity of human beings across the entire planet, not just here in the United States. But it seems like some of our biggest critics come from our side of the aisle.
You know, it's funny. First of all, Judas and the Black Messiah was written by the Lucas brothers, who are comedians. Which a lot of people, I don't know if people know that or not, but the Lucas brothers are stand-up comics. Those are my brothers in comedy. Yes, the expectation of us has always been to make us villains, vilify us, as well as reduce us to being people who are reactionary, violent, and ignorant, which is funny because the conditioning of Black people into slavery and to systemic oppression was done by people who were just that, ignorant and violent. So it's a bit of projection, if you will, as opposed to anything else. But absolutely. And so the thing is that we have to be able to do all of it, right? So we have to have a spectrum. And just like capitalism and white supremacy has its higher tier of people who you never see, who are in the private jets, you know, feasting on the caviar and drinking the best of water. There are the barbaric people who stormed the Capitol on the 6th. Right. And for some reason, they don't grant us our spectrum. We have to be monolithic. We have to be one dimensional, but that's not what it is, because we are a people. And just like we have our intellectuals, we also have our warriors, and we need everyone in the spectrum, and we need all hands on deck. And that is revolutionary and scary to a people who have acquired their power and privilege by way of just that. And so I don't apologize for that anymore, because we speak that too. And just like the NFA coalition showed up in Stone Mountain, and all these big time, white supremacists did not answer the call. I was proud of that. When I saw the TV show, I forgot the name of it, on HBO with Journey and, oh God, I can't believe I woke up too early this morning. But you know what I'm talking about.
Lovecraft Country?
Lovecraft Country. Yeah. I love the episode when she goes out and breaks the windows of the cars of the white boys who are messing with them. And the brothers stand on guard and protect her. Yes. Because for some reason, we have been, we've been, like I said, they tried to take our village away from us, and they tried to take the reality and the difference between man and woman and weaponize it against us. Whereas we can identify and still respect one another and not employ sexist views. So when we talk about, yes, art, it is important to see how it affects us, because just that restored in me the love and affinity that I have for the relationship between the Black man and the Black woman, and how we have to, stand, watch, and guard over one another. I just think that it is important to understand that white people don't get to tell us how we're supposed to behave, how we're supposed to express our art, how we're supposed to rap, how we're supposed to sing, how we're supposed to move, how we're supposed to react to our own oppression. They don't get to tell us that, and we have to get that out of our heads. So yes, as a stand-up comedian, I can't tell you how many rule books have been handed to me, proverbial rule books by people, children of a lesser God, if you will. I love using that term. How are you going to tell me who I'm supposed to be when you don't even know who you are? Like, who are you to tell me? You are only who you are because a system that benefits from telling you that you are what you are is in place. It's not because it's built on anything real. You don't get to kick it with Donald Trump in the private jet. You know what I'm saying? Jeff Bezos is not asking you to go to Ibiza for the private party. You're not feasting on the best of foods. You're drinking contaminated water and paying for it. You know, you are buying organic foods that are subpar and not really organic. They are organic because they meet a certain standard or label. So we have to just start putting things into perspective and putting people in their place, because I believe that that's true advocacy. When you talk to people who think just like you, that's just preaching to the choir. But when you can pull your white friends to the side and say, let me talk to you, my G, because we need to have this conversation, because I don't think you're really understanding. You're not picking up what I'm putting down. And the truth of it is that, yeah, you have a better life than me. You're welcome. That was my great grandmother's work. You're welcome.
Yeah.
You know, and so I take that with me everywhere I go. I don't leave it when I'm in the Hollywood rooms. I don't leave it when I'm on stage. I'm never going to leave that
wherever you go. I love it, Mom. Speaking of Lovecraft Country and how it affected your perspective of the relationship between black men and black women, my favorite episode was when Hippolyta realized she was a goddess. And I'm
absolutely,
like, yeah, that's how. And the part where she realized, or her husband realized, that he had been minimizing her and not letting her shine. And the solution in the entire story arc was when that black woman could shine, right? That's my testimony right now. Yeah, I've got some of the dopest friends in the game. Aida Rodriguez, like anytime you want to come on and anytime I can come on your show, just let me know.
I want you there every week. What you talking about?
Hey, okay. Hey, I tell you what, send me an invite. I bet you I'll be there too.
I'm going to send you another invite. But June, I do want you to be in New York on the weekend of June 9th is the date from my special, my HBO Max special. And I want to be in the house.
I will try. Let me see if I can line up and get this vaccine first, and then I'll be more than happy to be there. Yeah. Let me get that vaccine, and you already got. See, I already hate flying, and I hate COVID. So you trying to ask me to get on a plane during COVID and fly? I will be there even if I got to drive and get the vaccine. So that's it. Right. James, Aida Rodriguez. Actually, I know we put your information up on the screen a couple of times. Well, what is the best way you want people to get up with you?
They can tweet me at Funny AIDA, or on Instagram at Funny AIDA as well. And, you know, you can tweet me. I don't battle rap on the internet with suckers. So don't at me with the foolishness, because it's not going down. But if you want to have a conversation about how we can make the conditions of black and brown people better in this country, I'm here for it.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. James, you've been bopping all morning. Can you give the people something to start their day with? We want to make sure that all this information that they have, that they go out with a positive spirit, because it's not hopeless. We can change these things. Yes. James, it's in your hands.
Absolutely. Aida, thank you so much. We appreciate you so much. Shout out to Ben, and here's his favorite song.
Why you trying to play me? Telling me I'm crazy, trying to prove me wrong in every fight, knowing that I'm right. Why you trying to wreck me?
Shout out to everybody in the chat room that joined us. We appreciate the love, y'all, and support. Make sure that you hit that like button, hit that like button, and make sure that you share, comment, and subscribe, y'all, so you always know when like it or not, it's going down. Because like it or not, we gonna be here. Hey.
I love you. Why can't we just match the two? Why we get so mean? Light the match, I'm kerosene. We're fire. Oh, baby, we're fire. Feed the flame. We're fire. Oh, we're fire.
Shout out Goku in the building.
You love me and I love you, but in heads is what we do. Bullheaded, stubborn, wild, crazy lovers. You love me and I love you. Why can't we just match the two? Why we get so mean? Light the match, I'm kerosene.
Shout out Chuck Diesel. Shout out Brenda. We appreciate the love, lady.
Why you trying to play me? Telling me I'm crazy.
Brand Bubba Love is in the building.
Always cross-examining. Don't you think it's silly? Why won't you just trust me? Why can't you just look me in the eye and know I never lie? Why you tryna play me? Tell me that I'm crazy, tryna prove me wrong in every.
Chillin' Dragon, hopefully soon. We waiting for Rebecca to bring us on. But she did tell me that she has a plenty of it.
Wait too long. I just want that right now. Girl, you Uber outside. I can't wait just to get this.
Cam, that was fired by Yajit Attila. And Queer Melancholy. Unfortunately, I don't have a downloadable playlist, but you can go to my Mixcloud or my SoundCloud page, DJ X3C, and download some good old mainstream music. Hey.
Don't get freaky in the night. When she hit the room, you know it's on sight. And she all on my type. And you know I don't like to wait, no. But she look good. You ain't gotta stand in the mirror with your makeup on, cause you know that take way too long. I just want that right now. Girl, you Uber outside. I can't wait just to get this on. You want it right now. Want it right now. Don't take too long. You want it right now. Want it right now. Don't take too long. Girl, don't take too long. I've been waiting on you to pull up. Girl, I know you got a member, he can stay at home. He don't need to be around when I'm taking you down. Damn, that drink too strong. We can roll up. My baby, just hold up. Say you got a friend, bring it in. We can do what you wanna. I know you need it. Not to sound conceited, but girl, I complete you. I don't wanna wipe you up, no. But she look good. You ain't gotta stand in the mirror with your makeup on, cause you know that take way too long. I just want
Sugar Booger, be safe out there shoveling that snow. Leo gang.
Want it right now. Don't take too long. You want it right now. Want it right now. Don't take too long.
It was just a misunderstanding.
Chili Dragon, I appreciate you.
You waited in the rain for hours, and I couldn't say the right things. No, I checked your number twice, then I
left is best. Thank you for the love, so peace out.
You know that, yeah, everything about you makes me smile. I wanna be your best friend, your best friend. I wanna be
Cam, I appreciate the love.
You don't understand.
Shout out again to Aida Rodriguez. We appreciate you, man. We love having you on the show. Definitely gotta come back.
Love is all around, so baby, what's your hurry?
All day, I forgot. And if you feel so inclined to tip your DJ, that is me, myself, and I. DJ exclusive, y'all. You can at DJ X3C on Venmo and Cash App. DJ X3C on Venmo and Cash App, y'all. Stephen Baker, I appreciate that.
And I want you to meet my parents.
Y'all throw them lions up in the chat, y'all. Y'all throw them lions up in the chat.
My whole world with you, I'm so transparent. You tear down every wall that I built up. Now I wanna let you know that, yeah, everything about you makes me smile. I wanna be your best friend, your best friend. I wanna be around you all the time. You don't understand, you don't need to worry. I mean everything I said, you don't have to search no more. Love is all around, so baby, what's your hurry?
Jet lag, baby.
You don't have to
Chase, no sleep, call me jet lag, baby. Spend 1,020, spend 100 hundreds. Money come and gone, let's get straight to it. Been a businessman, it's bigger than music. Eyes on a new building with like 8 units. What's for sale, I might buy it all. Don't wanna put in work, now you just wanna ball. Got Louis bags with no money in them. Bigger the lie, the harder they fall.
Fast route. For me, it's always been a cash route. Bag route. Spend some money, switch a piece of cash.
Make sure you download the Voices app. Make sure you download the Voices app, y'all. And make sure that you search using our code 213756. Again, 213756. That way you can send us pictures, videos, messages, whatever you need to, y'all, and we can get it played on there. So make sure you download the Voices app and get Like It or Not anytime, y'all.
Real life, you're ballin' 2K. I was just a young count, lose change. Now I got it coming 22 ways. 12-12s on me, no flu game. Same team, we the new wave. I told my baby, come and get some. What's hers mine and she here to stay. I said, do you love me? Why not though? I know I'm on the go, I'm on the run, girl. For the money, I'm about those. I know I'm not from I like getting money, I got time to get it. Target on me, so my car's attention. I'm busy with the devil, I don't bargain with it. I was in the dash and the stick is with it. And I hit the 4-5 on the west side. But I'm from the east side, this how we slide. This how we ride, yeah, this how we ride. Going pro, no lead. Make it easy like 1, 2, 3. Go, on 3, 2, 1. I fly till you can't see me. Swish, yeah. Ballin', from the first whistle we go all in. And one, call it. Numbers up and never falling. Feel like I hit the lottery and proud of me, yeah. No baby proud of me, so I throw pride away. She know I stuck to the plan and I stayed out the way. Never spending no money, never touching the bank. Just from me the game and I'ma get it done. Don't do it for fame, do it for the ones. Ace with the dog, my damage my lungs. Wife you want to drive, she get what she want. I like getting money, I got time to get it. Target on me, so my car's a tenant. Dancing with the devil.
Shout out Brand. Brandon Johnson, we appreciate the love.
The 4-5 on the west side, but I'm from the east side. This how we slide, this how we ride, yeah.
Trolls is my favorite movie. Yes, Trolls is my favorite movie. But not in the chat room. Chuck Diesel, shout out to you, sir. I appreciate you for watching out.
On 3, 2, 1, I fly till you can't see me. Swish, yeah. Ballin', from the first whistle we go all in. And one, call it. Numbers up and never falling.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is gonna do it for your boy James Bubba Williams. Better know this DJ exclusive. Unfortunately, corporate America is calling my name and my phone and my email. So yeah, have to go handle that. But y'all, as always, we appreciate all of the love that you give and the support, y'all. Hey man, DJ Shaw, Christopher Shaw, I appreciate that love, y'all. But we want to say thank you for always rocking with us, y'all. So like it or not, we gonna be here. We ain't going nowhere. So make sure that you like, share, comment, subscribe, and always know when Like It or Not is going live, y'all. As always, we love you, we mean it, and we will see you in the morning. Peace out. Mwah.